one woman, I think, up there. I didn't hear anyone make sense. Somebody in the comments says that Mr. Lin, some guy named Lin, is the only architect on the panel that made any sense. I didn't hear anyone make any sense. The whole panel was postmodernist, and they're all from this or that architectural firm. And we're just going to do a few quotes from them, and then we'll just let this metaphor thing rest until I have another epiphany on it. So at 21 minutes, Charlie asks, does theory and the philosophy of architecture have any effect on what you're doing tomorrow and the next day and the next day? He asks this of the panel. Does theory and the philosophy of architecture have an effect on what you're doing tomorrow? Theory and the philosophy of architecture. Charles Gwathmey, G-W-A-T-H-M-E-Y, says, quote, I think theory is always relevant. I think that buildings like this, which are finely manifested by a great theorist, proves that perseverance and passion, that with perseverance and passion you can make buildings which are bigger than themselves. What's interesting to me is this is not a building that is an object building in the traditional sense. Interjection. What is an object building? He's not going to concretize that. Maybe everybody knows what an object building is in the traditional sense, but this is an object building in the new sense. He doesn't say how so. He doesn't even imply that, except for a shady implication. His next statement is, this is a trip, this building. And you can take fragments, and you can take strategies, blah, 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 we'll continue. This is a trip, he says. This is the first true thing the guy has said. He said this building is a trip. And I think what he means is it's a journey. But we can use the slang thing where we're like, you know, you saw a guy murdered in the street last night and you had to stay there and the cops came and questioned you. That was a trip. Last night was crazy. You know, that's a trip. This building's a trip in that sense. It's not a journey or anything like that, as he thinks or feels. Anyways, he continues. And you can take fragments and you can take strategies from it, and you can understand opportunities and apply them to bigger scales. And now, I don't know what the hell he means by fragments and strategies and understanding opportunities using the fragments and strategies, and then apply them to bigger scales. Supposedly means larger buildings. This is a $35 million building. So how much bigger are you going to get? But I doubt he means bigger scales, literally. Because, listen, he continues a bit more. And I think that's what Peter, in a way, has always tried to do. And as the ideas are composite here, the ideas are composite in this building, they're expandable theoretically and actually on a much different scale. That's the end of his statement. Can I remind you of the question? Charlie asks, does theory and the philosophy of architecture have any effect on what you do day to day? And you don't even get an answer. What Charlie's saying is, there's some really strange things in the theory of architecture. Does that really affect what goes on in the office? And the answer you get is things like, that if you have perseverance and passion, you can make buildings which are bigger than themselves. This building is a trip. You can take fragments and strategies from it and understand opportunities and apply them to bigger scales. It's nonsense. To continue, Charlie says, is architecture today in search of something? It's a good question because of all the ridiculous nonsense going on today. Richard Meyer answers, M-E-I-E-R. Richard Meyer, he answers, quote, I think architecture always is in search of forms that express our times, forms that express an attitude of what is. Okay, architecture expresses the culture of the day. We can accept that. So what's he saying with that? He continues, and it's the making of those forms, it's the making of space, it's the way in which it's made that architecture expresses its relationship to society at the time. It's the making of the space and the making of the forms. What does that mean? That when the building's going up and the welder is welding things and to get, you putting bolts, putting the steel here, it's that process of making that space, which is the way that architecture expresses its relationship to society. It's the stupidest statement I've ever heard. That's stupid. It didn't even address the question, is architecture in search of something today? Architecture's always in search of the forms that... Jeez. Peter Goldberger, architectural critic, pops up out of the audience with a comment. Winston is back. Yes, he's back. Peter Goldberger says, this building synthesizes impulses that were part of the modern movement with things that have gone far beyond it. Now, I just chose that out as the sensible part of what he says. Other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. He says, this building synthesizes impulses that were part of the modern movement with things that have gone far beyond it. So this building goes beyond the modern movement. He even mentions that this building could be called postmodernist, except for all of the corrupt things that postmodernism has become, or the way that the word postmodernism has been corrupted in society or something. They can't, like I said, they can't get out of bed in the morning without a metaphor. They can't stand it. And they won't shut up until there's a metaphor that's come out that makes no sense, that you can't make any sense of or concretize. That's the only thing that'll make them stop, is when they've said something that you can't test, that doesn't make any sense, that you can't question. I don't know. I rest my case.